Project is focused on collecting and recording the individual stories of LGBT people of central Pennsylvania during the latter half of the 20th century and the first few years of the 21st century. My name is Corinne Carthens, and the narrator of this interview is Laury MacIntyre. This interview is being held at Dickinson College's Bosler Hall, and today's date is March 29th, 2015. May I have your permission to conduct this interview?
You do.
Also, please be aware that you are able to stop this interview at any point in time. After this interview is complete, you will have the opportunity to decide how the material will be preserved and used. May you start by introducing yourself?
Well, my name is Laury MacIntyre. Legally, my name is Laura Lee MacIntyre.
May you spell that for the record?
Sure. Laury is actually spelled L-A-U-R-Y. MacIntyre is M-C-I-N-T-Y-R-E.
Okay, and may you please state your date of birth?
March 20th, 1961.
Now, may you allow me to gain some insight on your family origin and early development? This may include schooling, religion, family connections, and discovery of sexuality.
Wow. Okay. Well, I was actually born in Newport Beach, California. My father is actually a graduate of Dickinson College, and after graduation, he worked for a company called J.B. Lippincott Company, and he was a salesperson in the publishing industry. That took him out to California, henceforth where I was born. I have two older brothers, one who is a half-brother and one who is a full brother, and we all got schlepped out to California. We were only out there for about a year, so I don't even remember the experience, and then came back to the Philadelphia suburbs in Fort Washington, Pennsylvania. Growing up, I guess we were Presbyterian. I remember going to the first Presbyterian church in Flourtown, Pennsylvania, where I never wanted to wear skirts and dresses because the stockings, tights that my mom would pull up would always kind of sag down and never felt comfortable. I remember those battles. And that's, how far do you want me to go?
Go as long as you want. May you spell your parents' names out for me?
Sure. It's Mary, obviously M-A-R-Y, and Robert, R-O-B-E-R-T.
And the same last name?
Same last name.
And your siblings' names?
Robert Lee is my eldest brother, Bobby, and he passed away last year. And my other brother is Michael, M-I-C-H-A-E-L, and he is about 3 years younger, and he lives out in South Carolina now.
And how far did you go to school?
I have a graduate degree. I started out after high school at the local community college. It actually took me 4 years to finish up. I have always been a working student. I was having a hard time deciding whether or not I wanted to continue on for my bachelor's degree. And one of the deciding factors is, I remember when I was just starting to come out, going to a really seedy bar in Philadelphia called Sneakers. I don't think it's there anymore. But it took all the bravery I had, because it was just me, to go out to this place. And I remember, and it left such an impression, it made me continue my education. It was a old butch bar, and there were these very tough, blue-collar, 7 to 3 workers, you know, whether they were factory workers, and that's nothing derogatory towards them, but they were tough, and their whole existence was getting through their shift and blowing their whole money on the beer that they drank at this seedy bar and the few experiences that they had. And for me, that was not what I wanted to do with my life. And so I continued my education at Temple and graduated and then went into the working world, but then I went back to school and I completed my graduate degree at Penn State Harrisburg.
And what was your major?
I was general studies in my undergrad. In my associate degree, I was a marketing and distributive education major at Temple, and I studied training and development. So it's always been very wrapped around business marketing and education. I started out as an art major, but I didn't think I had the chutzpah. And so I really loved marketing and promoting things, and I love education. And oddly enough, my professional career has kind of wrapped around that circle.
I know you mentioned some religion earlier, so what is your religious affiliation and religion?
Well, I wouldn't say, I was brought up Presbyterian. And then I remember my dad taking us to Gloria Dei Lutheran Church. But I never really caught on to the dogma of religion. I do remember when I was 25, and I believe I was living out here in Harrisburg at the time, that I was reading Shirley MacLaine's, what was it? Was it Gone with the Light, or with one of her books, Out on a Limb, that's right. And having an epiphany of a different way of thinking. And that took me on a lifelong search of probably as many metaphysical, Eastern philosophy, spiritual books, even to this day, nonstop, and digging and digging and digging. So I don't necessarily consider myself religious. I am deeply spiritual. I was a member for a while, I guess I still am, with Unity Church, but it's non-denominational. So I am more of a believer of that we are all born divine, that we are all spiritual beings living a human experience. So that would probably wrap that philosophy up.
What is your occupational history?
After graduating college, I worked for the Art Institute of Philadelphia in downtown Philadelphia as a high school admissions representative. And what that entailed was we learned presentations to promote their art and photography and interior design programs. And I would go and schedule presentations in high school classrooms and do that for a living for 9 months out of the year. And then during the summer months, we would actually redesign the whole program again, so we'd have something new the next year. Now I learned that job old school. We actually, before cameras and everything else, we had these big boards that we would take original artwork and put them on the boards to display in the classroom. I actually schlepped around a 35 millimeter film, and I actually know how to thread one of those cameras that are probably in your archives today, and that's what we would show. Now since then I left there, I moved out to Harrisburg. I actually worked for, which is now Verizon, but it was Bell Yellow Pages, and I sold directory advertising for Yellow Page books. And I hated it. I was very good at it, but I hated it. I had a couple of other sales jobs, and then thank goodness I landed back into high school admissions again, this time for a culinary school in Baltimore, doing the same thing I did for the Art Institute. And once again, I loved it. I was their top recruiter, their top high school person, bringing in the most leads. I would actually go in and do little duck swan demonstrations and do things in garmage and plate decoration. I actually brought in demos into the classroom. And then as I was working on my graduate degree, the partner that I was involved in at the time wanted to go in and have their own sign business. And prior to that, she also had a cleaning business, which actually helped to pay for my graduate degree. So after I left the culinary school, and then I actually cleaned a lot of toilets, holding a graduate degree, and worked that very, very diligently. I didn't like it. And then we opened up our own sign business. And that lasted for about 3 years, and then 9/11 hit, and all the businesses kind of went, the sign business went down, the cleaning business leveled, so we closed the sign business, we kept the cleaning business for another year, and finally, after my mom passed on, I had enough oomph to say, this is crazy. I left the cleaning business, I left her, I moved, and I work for the company I now work for, Antonelli Institute, which is an art and photography school. And again, I went back into high school admissions and loved it. And now I'm the director of their high school admissions program. So I started out and ending up in the same spot, just with a whole lot more experience. Let's see, I moved out to Harrisburg when I was doing my grad work, and once I was involved with the current partner that I did all that crazy cleaning stuff, and I didn't do anything because all I was doing was working 100 hours a week. So I can appreciate you when you're working full-time and going to school. I lived the same life for many, many years. So I really wasn't involved at all. I was in a 13-year relationship that should have just lasted 3 years. But then after that ended, and when I worked for Antonelli, I got involved with another woman actually who was the publisher of the Lavender Letter. And I started getting more involved in the community, and I was actually rather thrilled because I was like, oh my gosh, everything was new. I had a life. I actually didn't work on weekends anymore. I wasn't working a 100-hour work week. I was back doing a job that I loved. So having a social life and meeting people, that was amazing. And then I joined the Central Pennsylvania Women's Chorus, in which I'm still a member today. And that's really what brought me into the LGBT community. Through that organization, and then I served on a few boards for the Women's Chorus Board. I was also involved in the Women's Circle on their board, and Judy, my partner at the time, was involved in the Stonewall Democrats, doing the Lavender Letter. She was very, very active. And so now I never had anything to do with the letter, other than making a few suggestions, but that I never really handled that. I just watched it. And so that's when I got more involved in the community itself, which was always a very positive experience, and sometimes very frustrating too. But at the same time, it was very nice to be out and about and active. And the Women's Chorus is still where my passion is, and I think through the music, that has been a very steadfast organization. And same thing, we're also very connected with the Men's Chorus as well.
Would you mind recounting your coming out story for me?
That was when I was still living in Philadelphia. I didn't come out till I was 21. Growing up, thank God I was involved in marching band because I wanted nothing to do with boys. That just didn't jive with me. I think it's the few boyfriends I had, I got rid of as soon as I could. What are you going to do with them? No idea. I was also molested as a little kid by a neighbor. And I think that probably led to my non-interest of anything sexual. In fact, for years I thought I was asexual once I learned what that word meant. And the thing that saved me in my high school years was marching band. And that's where I found my sense of community. It was where I really got to experience the arts, and I threw myself into that. And we were the award-winning marching cardinals. And so I had a great time with that. Then once I got into community college, let's see, coming out, I got very, very drunk on my 21st birthday. It was also my parents had divorced, and my mother was getting remarried. She also got remarried on my 21st birthday, and my stepbrothers, I remember, giving me a goose that they picked up at a local farm as a birthday present. And I remember taking this goose, or this, it was a Canadian goose, and taking it back with me and putting it in my father's bathroom overnight. I did. And my best friend at the time, Susan Kirby, was with me. And after my father was gone that night, and my brother wasn't home, so Susan and I just sat around and drank champagne. And it wasn't me, but one thing led to another on her part, and all of a sudden it was like the world opened up. And I was like, oh my gosh, is this what they're talking about? Oh my gosh, well, this is very different. I like this. And I remember talking with Susan on the phone the next day, and she was really rattled, because she was like, oh my gosh, I went over a line. And she felt that she definitely had distanced the friendship, because she was just freaked out. And me, on the other hand, I was like, wow, you opened that door. But I didn't know what to do with it. So it took me a while to figure things out. And my best friend at the time, his name also Stephen MacIntyre, spelled differently. And he was gay, and we hit it off. We were friends going to community college together. So every weekend we would drive up to New Hope, Pennsylvania, because those were the only mixed bars that were both lesbian and gay at the time. And there was a place called the Prelude, and we would go there every weekend. And it was so funny, because the guys would hang out upstairs, and then the girls would hang out downstairs, and the guys always referred to that as the pond. And the fishes, so to speak. And it was very separated. Even though it was together, it was very separated. And so that's where I met a number of different women off and on, but I was always looking for love in all the wrong places. And it was a while until I finally landed myself in one of many dysfunctional relationships, like most of us do. So I was late in life.
Because of how you identify sexually, what issues have influenced or affected other aspects of your life?
For me, I think it closed me off. And I don't know as much as I just didn't share that part of myself. I didn't share that part of myself with my parents. Now, I lived with my brother, so my brother helped to come out, so to speak, helped me come out, so to speak, vicariously through my parents, I'm sure. But we still didn't talk about it. That was the big thing in growing up in the 60s. You just don't talk about stuff. So all of that got shoved into whatever closet So I lived dual lives. It's very different today, but then I didn't bring that to work. I didn't bring that really to anywhere other than this social life that you would have outside of everything else that you're doing in your life. So you're very much a dual person, which is completely unhealthy. I don't recommend that to anybody. I think it also changed me from my religious/spiritual sense. I think had I grown up in a traditional marriage, identified myself as a heterosexual, I probably would have been more of in a traditional religion and gone down that path. But because I lived in a non-traditional world, which that religion didn't kind of fit into that box, it allowed me to look at life in a whole different way. So, and I guess I question like everything. And I have one of these inquisitive, very interested mind, so I'm always looking for, well, why is this happening? Why is that happening? So in a lot of, looking back, especially now when I see my generations like yours, and I certainly see it, where I really see it is when I'm Facebooking kids who are coming into my school, and I'll hit their Facebook and here they are with their significant other. And it's a girl, two girls or two guys or something like that, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I would have never been able to do that when I was their age. How comfortable is that? How wonderful is that? So I guess it's pushed us back, my generation, it's pushed us back. But now we're experiencing things that you guys have an opportunity to experience at this time, right now. So I think it's an interesting thing that you're doing with this project is you're getting to talk to a generation that grew up differently than LGBT teens are growing up today, hopefully. Now there's still a long way to go. But hopefully it's a lot easier, it's a lot healthier.
So I know you just mentioned some changes you've seen in the world in regards to the LGBT community. So what are some challenges that you would say still remain?
Well, the trans community right now, that's the next door that's going to be opening. Having gay marriage really flipped. And it's interesting, it opened really fast. Pennsylvania opened fast and unexpectedly. And mind you, we're having this huge surge of gay weddings. I have a lot of friends who are getting married right now that have been in relationships for years. And it's also very scary too, because now it's permanent. Where we're having people in transgender roles getting significant jobs and a public personas. We're seeing now media is latching onto that. And so that's the next door that you're going to be seeing open. Oddly enough, maybe we actually might see women being paid the same as men. Maybe. I don't know why, for some reason, all these other doors are opening and that one hasn't opened. Or the first woman president, or, things like that. So hopefully soon.
So I know you've mentioned a couple of your relationships that you had in the past. Would you mind describing for me your adult family formation and development? This may include marital status, children, and current family.
Well, I've never had children, and I don't regret that. I don't think I was wired to have children. I've had a few long-term relationships. When I was with Dawn, that was a 13-year relationship. Should have been 3. And it took my mother's passing for me to jolt myself out of that. I was with Judy for 5 or 6 years, and that ended that was a very weird ending to that relationship. She was not the person I thought she was. So that ended about 3 years ago. Currently, I'm in a very, very happy relationship. We're not married. We don't live together. Jan has her home. I have my home, and that's a very precarious situation when you get involved when you're both in your 50s, and you both have assets. So then you're like, well, what are we going to do with that, and how is that going to proceed? I have a wonderful animal family. I have a dog, Shelby. I have 3 inside male cats, Michael, Sebastian, and Zach. And I have an outside cat, Callie. And they are my family. And so I have an extended family of friends. I have one sibling who's still alive, and that's my brother, Michael. I have an amazing sister-in-law, Connie. And a few cousins here and there, but my family's getting smaller. And so my current family and my partner are very, very important to me. And who knows where that's going to lead. That'll be an interesting journey.
Here's a quick question. Did you ever accept commission into the military?
No, never had a desire to. And I never was fit like you. I was always an artsy-fartsy kid. And I always battled with my weight, so I wasn't much of an athlete, and the idea of trying to get through boot camp would just scare the bejesus out of me.
What would you say are some important events and turning points in your life?
Coming out was certainly one of them. That was a huge piece of the puzzle that set my whole life in a different direction. It answered questions. I had an identity. That was a big part. My parents' divorce was also pivotal. That happened prior to me coming out. Moving out to Harrisburg was big. Moving from my home out here. That was the first time I was literally on my own with no extended family. I think the other big thing was my mother's passing. I was always a mommy's girl. Always. Still am. And when she passed away, and I helped her die. I would work nights with the janitorial business, take a nap, drive from Harrisburg to the Philadelphia suburbs, and arrange my mom's nurse's assistants, and drive back. And I did that for a number of months. But it was the most wonderful and heartbreaking experience, and probably one of the biggest growth experiences I ever had. And it helped me come to age, per se. And after she passed, it was like a veil came off of me, and everything that I was afraid of before, I wasn't afraid of. I got out of that job. I left my partner. I got in an apartment. I even left the home that was in my name and started a new life and found a job that I loved again. I feel very blessed because I love what I do for a living, and I'm really, really good at it. And I like to think that I help the next generation, or the next generation after you, help them connect with interesting and thoughtful careers that fit them. And so that most recently, the big turning points of my life have been meeting my current partner, Jan, and realizing that you can really fall in love and be loved again and again. And meeting somebody who really really loves you back 100% and there's not nearly as much dysfunction as I used to have. So I must have matured a lot to attract somebody like Jan into my life and all her feistiness. And that really fills my family. She fills my family void. And most recently, last year, I was promoted to director of the high school outreach program. And that has been a very exciting, now I'm actually in charge of a department, and that has been very, very exciting. So I am in a really good spot right now of my life. Now my next thing that I'm trying to take on is the weight issue that I still have from all the baggage. It's true what they say, when you're molested as a little kid, it's not uncommon to see a weight pattern because you use it to protect yourself. But you can only hang on to that excuse for so long. Then it becomes your habit and then you have to own it. So that is the next journey that I'm trying to take, is my own personal, it's the one area in my life that I really haven't been able to control. And so I hope I can get, I know I will get a control of that, and that'll be the next big shift. You never stop changing and you never stop growing. And I'm sure when we all die, that's the next big change. And, but it has been an interesting journey. And I am so glad that this is where I am. I'm glad to live this life as a lesbian woman at this particular time. It's a kick and it's a lot of fun.
So as this interview comes to an end, do you have any materials from the LGBT community that you would like to share or donate with us?
Well, I donated to the LGBT Center, and ultimately it ends up in your home here at Dickinson College, which is oddly enough where my father graduated college, so it's apropos. Those copies of the Lavender Letter that my partner, who was the editor, had kept over the years. And I think there's enough copies of that from her time as editor, and then also a span of time when Jody Evans had it. And then there was another woman who had started the letter prior to them. And my hope is that maybe somebody from your generation or somebody within the community, especially the L part of the community, and I was saying earlier that we as lesbians have a tendency to nest, and we fall away from one another, and, except from our immediate group. Unless there's something really big within the community that all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, there's multiple generations and I don't know all these people. So it'd be nice if somebody could pick up the torch